Holidays in my hometown were always magical. Small-town traditions meant twinkling lights on every porch, carolers braving the cold, and an annual Christmas Eve parade where someone dressed as Santa Claus rode down Main Street on a bright red sleigh float. It was cozy, festive, and quintessentially Christmas. But one year, the magic was replaced by something far darker. It started innocently enough. I was visiting my parents for the holidays, eager to escape the chaos of the city. I hadn't been home in years, and the nostalgia hit me hard when I arrived. The house was just as I remembered, garlands strung along the staircase, a massive tree in the living room, and the familiar scent of pine and cinnamon. That evening, after a hearty Christmas Eve dinner, I decided to take a walk to stretch my legs. Snow blanketed the ground, crunching softly under my boots as I strolled through the neighborhood. The air was crisp, and the glow of holiday lights made everything feel serene. As I rounded the corner to Main Street, I noticed something odd. The parade had ended hours ago, but a man dressed as Santa Claus was still standing in the square near the giant Christmas tree. His back was to me, and he seemed to be staring at the twinkling lights. I paused, feeling a little uneasy. It wasn't uncommon for someone to linger after the parade, but the way he stood so still, almost statue-like, gave me pause. "Hey, Merry Christmas!" I called out, more to break the silence than anything else. He didn't respond. Shrugging it off, I turned to leave, but something about the situation gnawed at me. The festive atmosphere suddenly felt heavy, oppressive even. I glanced over my shoulder, and that's when I noticed him turn his head slightly, just enough for me to see the side of his face. His eyes, they weren't warm or joyful, like you'd expect from someone playing Santa. They were dark, hollow, and unblinking. I quickened my pace, convincing myself it was just someone messing around, maybe a teenager playing a prank. By the time I reached my parents' house, I had nearly forgotten about it. Nearly. That night, I couldn't shake the image of him standing there, motionless. Even as my family exchanged laughs and stories in the living room, I found myself glancing out the window toward Main Street, half expecting to see him still there. At around midnight, I decided to head to bed. The house was quiet, save for the occasional creak of the old floorboards. As I settled under the covers, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from a high school friend, Jesse, who still lived nearby. "Hey, you see that Santa guy in the square tonight? Creepy, right?" A chill ran down my spine. It wasn't just me then. I texted back, "Yeah, I saw him. Probably someone goofing around." Her reply came almost instantly. "He followed me home. Or at least, I thought he did. Just be careful, okay?" I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Was she serious? Before I could respond, I heard something outside. A faint crunch of snow like footsteps. I froze, listening intently. The sound grew louder, closer, until it stopped directly beneath my bedroom window. I slowly got out of bed and crept to the window, my breath fogging up the glass as I peered out into the night. There he was. The man in the Santa suit stood in the driveway, his head tilted upward, staring directly at my window. I stumbled back, heart racing. My rational mind tried to make sense of it. Maybe it was someone playing a joke, or maybe I was imagining things. But when I mustered the courage to look again, he was still there, completely still, his breath visible in the icy air. I grabbed my phone and dialed Jesse, my hands trembling. "Jesse, he's here," I whispered. "What? Who?" she asked, groggy and confused. "The Santa guy. He's standing outside my house?" There was a long pause before she replied, her voice shaking. "Lock your doors. I'm coming over." I didn't have time to argue. I ran downstairs, double-checking every lock and turning off the lights to make it harder for him to see inside. My parents were asleep, and I didn't want to wake them. They'd think I was being paranoid. I peeked through the peephole, but the porch was empty. Had he left? Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. A loud bang echoed from the back of the house. I turned, my heart pounding in my chest. Slowly, I made my way to the kitchen, where the back door had a small window. He was there again, standing just beyond the door, his gloved hand resting on the glass. His face was expressionless, and yet, there was something so menacing about him. I backed away, fumbling for my phone to call the police, but just as I pressed the numbers, the doorbell rang. Jesse, I thought, rushing to the front door. I opened it without checking, but it wasn't Jesse. It was him. He stood there in his red suit, the white trim stark against the darkness. This close, I could see that the fabric was worn, stained with something dark that didn't look like dirt. His beard was yellowed and patchy, and his gloved hands clenched into fists. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice cracking. He didn't say a word. Instead, he tilted his head and slowly raised a hand to point behind me. I whipped around, half expecting to see something, or someone, inside the house. But there was nothing there. When I turned back, he was gone. The next few moments were a blur. Jesse arrived minutes later, and together we called the police. They searched the area but found no trace of him. The rest of the night passed in a haze. I barely slept, jumping at every creak and groan the house made. Morning couldn't come fast enough. When the sun finally rose, everything felt normal again. My parents thought it was just a prankster, and Jesse and I tried to laugh it off. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. A week later, I returned to the city, eager to put the experience behind me. Life went on, and the strange events of that Christmas Eve were just an eerie memory. Every year, as the holiday season approached, a sense of anticipation mixed with a tinge of anxiety settled over me. It wasn't the festive decorations or the crowded malls that bothered me. Rather, it was a lingering memory from my childhood that resurfaced like a ghostly apparition every December. As I grew older, the tale of that chilling night became a haunting narrative, casting shadows on what was supposed to be a joyous time of the year. It all started in the small town of Brookhaven, where I spent my childhood. Nestled between snow-capped mountains and enveloped in a sea of evergreen forests, Brookhaven transformed into a picturesque wonderland during the holidays. Families adorned their homes with colorful lights, and the scent of pine trees wafted through the crisp winter air. My family lived in an old Victorian house at the edge of town, a relic of a bygone era. Its creaking floorboards and flickering gas lamps added a touch of nostalgia to the holiday season. However, there was one particular Christmas Eve that would forever be etched in my memory. On that fateful night, the town was blanketed in a thick layer of snow, muffling the sounds of the outside world. The air was so cold it bit through the layers of clothing, and the only warmth came from the crackling fireplace in our living room. As darkness descended, my family gathered around the tree, exchanging laughter and opening presents. The scent of freshly baked cookies and the sound of carolers in the distance created a cozy atmosphere. Yet, beneath the veneer of holiday cheer, an unspoken tension lingered. It was around midnight when a soft knock echoed through the silence of the night. Startled, we exchanged puzzled glances. Visitors were a rarity in our neck of the woods, especially on such a frigid night. My father, ever the cautious one, made his way to the front door. Opening it cautiously, he was greeted by an elderly man, his face weathered by time and etched with lines that spoke of a lifetime's worth of stories. He wore a tattered coat, stained with patches of snow, and his eyes held a weariness that transcended mere physical fatigue. "Good evening, sir," the old man greeted, his voice a whisper against the winter wind. "I hope I'm not disturbing your festivities. My car broke down a few miles from here, and I was wondering if I could use your phone to call for assistance." My father, though skeptical, couldn't turn away someone in need on Christmas Eve. He invited the stranger inside, offering him a seat by the fire and the use of our phone. As the old man dialed the numbers with trembling hands, a subtle unease settled over the room. Minutes turned into hours as we engaged in polite conversation, attempting to make our unexpected guest feel welcome. Yet, there was something about him that set my nerves on edge, a subtle shift in the air, an undercurrent of tension that refused to be ignored. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the old man hung up the phone. "Thank you for your kindness," he said, rising from his seat. "Help is on the way, and I'll be out of your hair shortly." As he made his way to the door, my father offered to lend him a blanket for the night, given the severity of the storm. The old man hesitated, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for something. Then, with a forced smile, he declined, insisting that he could tough it out until help arrived. As the door closed behind him, a collective sigh of relief swept through the room. We resumed our festivities, but the joyous atmosphere had been tainted by an unspoken discomfort. At night, awoke to the sound of shuffling in the darkness. My breath caught in my throat as I strained to identify the source of the disturbance. The air was thick with tension, and a shadowy figure emerged from the corner of my room. It was him, the old man. His eyes gleamed with a malevolent glint, and I could see the outline of his tattered coat as he moved silently towards the Christmas tree. Panic surged through me as I realized his true intentions. He wasn't here seeking refuge. He was here to take advantage of the trust we placed in him. Adrenaline coursing through my veins, I sprang from my bed and confronted the intruder. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. The old man's expression twisted into a sinister grin, and without uttering a word, he lunged toward me. We grappled in the dimly lit room, the struggle intensifying with each passing moment. The once calm atmosphere of the holiday season was shattered, replaced by the desperate sounds of a fight between predator and prey. Despite his frail appearance, the old man possessed a surprising strength. Our breaths mingled in the cold air as we wrestled for control. In the dim light, I could see the glint of a stolen heirloom clutched in his hand, the very artifact that had been passed down through generations in my family. With a surge of determination, I managed to break free from his grasp, sending him stumbling backward. The stolen object fell from his hand, clattering against the floor. Seizing the opportunity, I sprinted toward the door, my heart pounding in my chest. The old man, realizing his failed attempt, fled into the night, disappearing into the shadows. The air in the room seemed to shimmer with the remnants of his malevolence, and as I surveyed the scene, I couldn't shake the unsettling realization that he had returned not for shelter, but to exploit the generosity of those who had once welcomed him with open arms. The chill of a winter's night hung in the air as Christmas Eve approached. Our small suburban home, nestled among the evergreen trees, adorned with twinkling lights, presented a picturesque scene of holiday cheer. This year, like every year, we anticipated the arrival of the mysterious caroler who graced our doorstep, their haunting melodies weaving a spellbinding tapestry of Yuletide magic. The tradition began generations ago, a tale passed down through our family. As the clock struck midnight on Christmas Eve, a lone figure would appear in the glow of our porch light, a caroler dressed in vintage attire, their face obscured by the shadows of a wide-brimmed hat. Their voice, ethereal and haunting, echoed through the silent streets, captivating our hearts with each melancholic note. The caroler's presence became as much a part of our family lore as the ornaments on our Christmas tree. Over the years, we eagerly awaited their arrival, savoring the enchantment they brought to our holiday festivities. The joyous tunes of Deck the Halls and Silent Night resonated through the night, and the neighborhood would come alive with the magic of the season. However, as the years passed, a subtle shift occurred. The caroler's songs took on an unsettling undertone, the lyrics morphing into a haunting melody that left an indelible mark on our souls. The joyous hymns began to tell a tale of tragedy and woe, a story of a bygone era steeped in darkness. On this particular Christmas Eve, as the clock neared midnight, we gathered in the warmth of our living room, exchanging laughter and festive cheer. The anticipation of the caroler's arrival mingled with the scent of cinnamon and freshly baked cookies. As the clock struck 12, a soft knock echoed through the house, sending a shiver down our spines. I glanced at my family, their expressions a mirror of my own curiosity and trepidation. We made our way to the door, the soft glow of holiday lights casting long shadows on the floor. As the door creaked open, the vintage caroler stood before us, their face hidden beneath the brim of their hat. The air seemed to still as they began to sing, their voice a haunting lament that sent a chill through the night. O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel. The words, once filled with the promise of salvation, now carried an ominous weight. The careless eyes, unseen in the darkness, seemed to bore into our souls as they sang. The atmosphere shifted, the enchantment replaced by an unsettling tension that hung in the air like a heavy fog. With each passing verse, the lyrics unveiled a century-old tragedy, a tale of lost love, betrayal, and a lingering spirit condemned to wander the earth. The haunting notes painted a vivid picture of a past resident in our home, a tragic figure whose story had been buried in the depths of time. As the final strains of the carol faded into the night, the caroler's gaze met mine, and an unspoken understanding passed between us. It was time to unearth the secrets buried within the walls of our home, to confront the echoes of the past that lingered in the stillness of the night. In the days that followed, we delved into the archives of the town's history, seeking clues to the century-old tragedy hinted at in the caroler's song. The more we uncovered, the darker the tale became. It was the story of a forbidden love affair, a betrayal that led to a duel in the dead of winter, and the untimely demise of a young soul.